Hello, everybody. My name is Kyle, and this is the Conservative Take, and this is the live stream version of the show. And I'll be here for probably about an hour. And I got some things to talk to you about. This show is called the Top 3 Show. And what I do on this particular program, I haven't done it for about a month, but what this show is basically about is I take 3 topics that's going on, obviously, around the world and around the country that is pretty popular. But also I take topics that no one's really talking about. And unfortunately, I have one that's not very popular at all. To me, it's actually pretty tragic, but I think it needs some attention. So I'm gonna talk about that one. That's basically about a young kid who was killed in Wilson, North Carolina by a monster. That's all we can say about that. But I won't end the show on that. I'll end actually on something going on in Chicago, which is actually pretty positive. But I will warn you now, when I get to that part of the program, there will be some profanity in this clip I'm going to show you. It's about a minute long. I did actually watch it. And as you know, I don't have much profanity, if any, on the show. But this is an important enough video that I don't mind showing it. So just for those people who have those kind of sensibilities, just be warned about that. I'll warn again once I get to that part in the program. But the lead-in topic is going to be, of course, Miss Kamala Harris. And the funny thing is, on this particular topic with Miss Kamala, is that she's actually one of the worst kept secrets in this particular election, because she pretty much, in my opinion, and not just my opinion, many other people's opinion, are very, very, very power hungry. And so what I'm going to do, ladies and gentlemen, just so you guys don't know, I'm going to jump into this. I know I'm kind of jumping in, but those people who aren't familiar with this program, what I'll do is you can comment in the feed here, and I can actually post a comment up on the screen so people can see it. Now, if you don't want to show the comment, if you want the comment to be private just to me, just make a note of that. Maybe put an asterisk by it so I'll know not to post it on the screen. But if I feel it's appropriate, I will post it, and unless you tell me otherwise. And for instance, this comment here, I'll post this one here, just guys to give you an idea of how it looks. So this person here posted, so I just did that. So that's how it will look. And then what we'll do is, as that happens, I will chime in and I'll interrupt, and I'll actually talk about that if I have a good point to break. Now, I'm just myself today. I don't have a guest. Normally I have one guest or 2 guests to talk about a topic, but it's just me today. So I will do my best to pay attention to that as it happens. So anyway, back to Miss Kamala Harris. And so I did a little digging on Miss Harris, Senator Harris. She is from Oakland, California, and she is someone who's very, very ambitious, which is great. I'm all for that. But she grew up in Oakland, and she moved to Howard University for 4 years. That's where she went to college. She got a degree, another degree, and then she became a lawyer and became a prosecutor. And I'll get into more of that about her. But she's got an interesting story. But I want to talk about her. But before I want to get into that, I want to actually talk about her choice as the VP. And if you guys don't know me personally, I've actually been in politics for quite a while. I've run some campaigns. I've seen the Republican Party on the ins and the outs in different ways, on the national level, on the state level, on the local level. And I've run campaigns. I've done the number crunching and all that stuff. So what I'm saying is, from my personal experience, not that I'm particularly an expert, but just from the being around politics, this is what I'm seeing in terms of her, in my opinion, on who she is, what role does she fill in terms of the vice presidential role, because there are key roles that a vice president must fill, traditionally speaking, and why Biden picked her, and what does that say about her? What does that say about his campaign for him picking her? And how does it help Joe Biden in the Electoral College? And lastly, who are we glad that he did not pick? I think if you've been watching my Facebook feed, you know exactly who I'm talking about. And yeah, I'm so glad that he didn't pick this person. So let's jump right in. So vice presidential pick. So traditionally speaking, for vice president, nobody votes for the vice president. John Adams was the first vice president, and he had a miserable time. He basically led the Senate, and that's all he did. But in doing so, he couldn't do anything with the Senate because he had no role. He just had to sit there and watch them debate. So the only time the vice president comes into any play is there's a tie. So the vice president traditionally does absolutely nothing. But recently, the vice president has been doing some things, particularly in terms of balancing the ticket. And that is the first thing that a president needs for his or her companion is somebody to balance the ticket. And they can balance the ticket in many ways. They can balance it from an electoral college standpoint, like JFK did with Johnson when he needed Texas and the Southern and the Sun Belt to help win that election, or someone like a Ronald Reagan who was persuaded to take on Bush because of his ties to Texas as well, and also some other things within the conservative movement because Reagan was kind of a rebel even back then. And people like Lincoln, it was a compromise with Johnson, and even John McCain with Sarah Palin. People joke about Sarah Palin, but people forget that at the time, John McCain had no chance whatsoever of beating Obama. Zero. The Republican Party was pretty much, we were depressed because we knew Obama was going to probably win, and McCain was just a dinosaur who basically just the role fell into his lap, right? And so, but in doing so, he needed someone to help get the ticket excited, and Palin did that. Okay, at the time, the big controversy in America, not the big controversy, but the big issue in America at the time was energy, gas prices. It was huge, and so she was from a energy-rich state, Alaska, and she was a governor, which is a big deal. If you're governor of any state, it's a big deal because you have to control like you would a country, just on a smaller scale. And she was charismatic, attractive, and funny, and the whole lipstick on a pig speech she did at the convention was awesome. And so that was great. But of course, things happened along the way. She had some interviews that happened. The media got on top of her. And then the housing market happened. And so her relevancy kind of went away because energy was no longer the main thing. But initially, John McCain picking Sarah Palin was actually a very inspired choice, in my opinion. And I think if he had to do it again, if someone like him had to do it again, I would say do the same thing. It would have worked. She probably still would have lost, but he would have gotten a lot closer. In fact, Obama, who was with Biden at the time, was actually losing for like a week in the polls. Once Sarah Palin came on, Obama dropped below McCain. A lot of people don't remember that, but he did. So I'm getting off on the subject here a little bit, but the thing is vice president has to play a key role, and that's to balance the ticket. That's number one. Number two, a vice president traditionally must be the kind of person who can be your attack dog. This person needs to go after the incumbent or the challenger with because that's the thing that voters don't want to see come from the presidential candidate. They want to see the presidential candidate be presidential and be diplomatic, and then they let the vice president candidate go after them in the most fierce way. And you see that a lot going back in the elections, going back to, well, not Quayle with Bush. He messed up, but you would see going back to those days, it was always the vice president who did that. So that being said, does Kamala Harris fit those two roles? Well, let's start with the obvious. Does she fit the role of the attack dog? Well, absolutely she does. She is a person who is a prosecutor and attorney, and she could be the person that could go after Trump and could do the things, the dirty work that Biden really has a hard time doing, even if it comes to him articulating a thought, because we all know he doesn't have a really good job of articulating his thoughts. So that's number one. And number two, is she the kind of person that could balance the ticket? And this is where I feel that Joe Biden probably made a mistake, because what she brings to the table is not what he needs. She comes from a state from California, which is a state that they're going to win anyway. So he doesn't need her there. And then the other side of it is, what does she bring to it from a demographic side? Well, I know she's coming in as African-American, even though she's Indian and Jamaican, but she identifies as Black and whatever. If that's what people think she is, will that be enough to increase the Black vote? I don't know. She identifies as a Black female, but Black females vote Democrat at a 95 to 98% clip each election cycle. So there's not a lot of moving in that particular area. Will she galvanize the black male vote? I'm not sure. Will she galvanize the Latino vote? Talking from people that I know from the Lexit community who've told me about Kamala Harris, there's a big sentiment in the Hispanic community that just don't like her because of what she said, things she's done, her incarceration of people. And so that may not be that big a deal either in terms of adding anything to the Biden campaign. So that to me is really a misnomer. I don't know why he did that, but here is why I think he picked her. And I may sound like I'm talking against myself here because I think he picked her for a reason. And the reason I think he picked her for, number one, he was probably pressured into picking her. But the handlers with Joe Biden probably saw what I'm about to tell you right now. They see that there's an extreme left, radical left in the Democrat Party. One second. There's a strong radical left in the Democrat Party, and Joe Biden has typically run as an independent or as a moderate. And so now he's being swung over to the left of the party. And so Joe Biden is not stupid. He's smart enough to know that the majority of his party is still in that center left position, even though the loudest portion of that party is to the radical left. And so the same thing that Pelosi had to do, same thing that Chuck Schumer had to do, they had to kind of placate this loud, radical, violent left to make sure that they can have enough support to go into a general election. But the problem is the general election is usually won, almost always won, by the independent vote. And so what they're kind of leveraging on is the party's hatred for Trump. And so placating the left and hoping that the moderates within the party will just come along. And that is what I think they're trying to do. And with Kamala Harris, I think with her pressure and her ambition, I think that's one factor of it. Another factor is the fact that her handlers are pushing Biden to pick a woman of color. But I think the biggest reason really is because he's losing the black vote. He is losing the black vote, and they have to do something. And see, this is, to me, is something that is really, really difficult for the Democrats right now. They should have the black vote in the bag, okay? But right now, we're looking at Rasmussen monthly average of 36%. It's gotten as high as 49% in the black community in terms of Trump's approval. And the thing is that it's been consistently over 30% the entire year. And so, and even Latino support is in the high 30s consistently. It got to as 50% back in January in two different polls. And so that's what Biden's trying to do. He's trying to win back the black votes. But to me, that just gets him back to square one. Okay, that just gets him back to where he needs to be. And the fact that she is so left and so radical, the people he may bring back from the black vote, he's going to lose from the moderate to left of center people within the Democrat Party. So it's going to be a wash, in my opinion. I don't see how that's going to effectively help him. Another thing about Kamala Harris is her personality. I just said that she is supposed to be someone as an attack dog. Well, unfortunately, I think for Joe Biden, I think she would be too good at that. I think she's going to be a person that she's going to be so good at being an attack dog that she's just going to turn people off. And remember, this is going to be all about the independent vote. This is all about two things I mentioned before. It's going to be about the independent vote, and it's going to be about keeping the bases. Keeping the bases happy and turning them out. So it's going to be a turnout, and it's going to be the independent vote. That's the key to this election. And I'm not sure if Kamala Harris can excite the independent votes at all. I just don't. I know she's not going to sway any black Republicans to go their way. If anything, she's going to disenfranchise black male voters to either not show up because she's just not have a good personality. So we will see what happens when the polls come out. I guess that's going to be Friday. Rasmussen does their poll daily, but I think it's like a day behind. So the polling they want for today won't show up until Friday. And so we'll take a look at that, and then we'll see if it trends. Really, you're looking for trends, and that's really the key thing. But you'll get an instant thing here. And if Biden doesn't get a significant bump with Kamala Harris, he's in trouble. He's in trouble because if you look at the Rasmussen polling over the past 3 weeks, the metrics have been coming closer and closer to the center. Biden had a 10-point lead going back in June, 10 points. And it was like that. And so now suddenly you saw it spiking down to now within 6, I think within 7 today. But that's within striking distance, especially when you're talking about polls that are overly weighted for Democrats. Overly. And not only that, but they're also misweighted for independents. I have several videos on that. You can check that out as well. I explain how the pollings work, how the monster vote can come into play, how there's other factors like the incumbent bounce that happens every 4 years without fail, going back to Nixon, where the incumbent always gets a bump of at least 10 points at some point. It's really, really interesting how that happens, because what happens is once the president gets out of the Oval Office and goes out on the campaign, he gets to use the power of the office. He gets to use Air Force One. He gets to use all that and use the bully pulpit to make himself appear way better in people's eyes, because they usually see him, behind the desk before he's campaigning. Now, Trump's been doing a lot more because he's been campaigning on rallies, but he hasn't campaigned at all since the COVID virus has come out. So that's put him at a serious disadvantage as well. However, I won't get too much into that because I have enough videos on that. So that's why I think Joe Biden picked her, because he's losing the black vote. He's being pressured by his base. He's being pressured by his pundits. He's being pressured by Kamala, because she's very, very ambitious, and she is just someone who is very, very, I would say, well, I guess power hungry, but she's very influential, and she's done a tremendous job from what she's done as a junior senator, and now running for president, and now a vice presidential candidate. And no matter what you want to say about her, there's a lot to be said about her. I'm getting memes in my inbox left and right, which are hilarious. But no matter what you say about her, I mean, that's an accomplishment, all right, for what that's worth. Okay, so what does it say about the Democrat Party? What does it say about them in trying to get her as their candidate? I think what it just says, as I just said, that they aren't as strong as they think they are, or they aren't as strong as they're coming out to say. Because with the various battleground states where Trump has been leading by an average of 7 points, if you look at a CNN poll that came out back in May, and this past week he was leading in 2 battleground state polls, whereas the states that matter, right? California and New York do not matter, which is why having Kamala Harris from California come in, that doesn't buy you anything. All that's going to buy you is maybe the popular vote. You're going to get to pad those votes in those counties that are highly, highly, highly densely populated with Democrats. But again, that's not going to get you anything, because it's still an electoral college that you have to win. And when you look at Trump in areas like Ohio, you look at areas like Michigan and Minnesota, you look at New Hampshire, you look at North Carolina, you look at Florida, you see that Trump is highly competitive and leading in most of those. And so when it comes down, what I think we'll see, it's on election day, we're going to see those states break hard to Trump toward the end. And I think you could see a wave happen. Now, there's a lot of time between then and now. We have debates that have to happen. We have the murder hornets are coming. They're going to have some kind of tragedy between here and now to get people off of the election and blame Trump for something. I'm hearing that there may even be Durham, who's the prosecutor or the investigator under Barr looking at the Russia collusion hoax, that there could be indictments coming down. Also, Hillary Clinton's supposed to be testifying in a few weeks. So a lot of things can happen going on here, and I just don't know what can happen. But I do see, if everything being equal, that going into the election, if Biden doesn't have a 10 or 15 point lead, and even if he does have that kind of lead, because like I said, the monster vote's still there, I think Biden's going to be in trouble. And if we don't see a bounce by Monday or Tuesday of next week of this, then what that says is that Kamala has done nothing for him, and there's absolutely no bounce whatsoever. And also, we want to look at the convention, which would be online, and we'll see what happens there. Who gets a bump out of that? I think Trump will have a bigger bump than Biden. So this thing's going to tighten up really, really quickly. And also, you have polls toward the end. They always come together because they all want to be. If they're going to be wrong, they want to be wrong altogether. So we see the polls tightening up because they don't want to be too wrong. And that's what that will happen. So we'll see these things come together probably within 4 to 5 points by the day of the election. So we shall see. But I think Trump is in good shape. I think what he's doing with his new campaign manager, I think what he's done from day one, since he got rid of Brad Parscale, he's done nothing but help the campaign. We're seeing targeted ads. We're seeing ads dealing with America First. We're seeing ads about law and order, the same philosophy that got Nixon every single state except for like one in 72. And I think that's the kind of thing that people want to see. They want to see that their commander in chief is in control. They want to feel that the situation with the COVID is actually being handled, which is why he went back to doing the briefings. If you look back to the briefings of the COVID, he stopped doing the briefings, but before that, he was doing extremely well in his approval ratings. When he stopped doing it, he let the media take over the narrative, and then the narrative became what they wanted to say, and then his poll numbers started going down. So now he went back to the briefings, and now they're going up again. So that's another thing that the new campaign manager did. So we have something here. Let's see. Do you see the crowd for? Let's do this here. We have a question here from Sean. It says, did you see the crowd for Biden-Harris presser? Seen more in the line at Walmart. Sean, I did not see that, but I did see a status on one of my buddies on Facebook, and he said that dozens of people showed up for that particular rally. And that's one of these things, man. People say, well, crowds don't matter and signs don't matter. That's all anecdotal and that doesn't mean anything. Well, if it doesn't mean anything, then why is it on all these things I've been part of, with the launching of a governor campaign for like Pat McCrory or anything I've seen, they always try and get the crowd tight. They want to get people holding signs. They want to make the room look bigger than what it is. They want the optics. They're always trying to control it. So why is it that if it doesn't matter, why does it always matter when it really matters? And so I just think that it only matters it only doesn't matter because he didn't get any crowd numbers. If he got a huge crowd, if he got 100 people there or 200 people there and packed it out in a small room, they would have been, Biden's doing everything. So I think it's just about narrative and spinning what they don't want people to see. So Sean, thank you for that particular question. I have not seen that. I will take a look at that. So let's see what else. Okay, this one guy here says, I'm sorry if I spell your name right. I'm not pronouncing your last name. Renicky says, polls, if you believe in polls, I have a London Bridge to sell you. Yeah, exactly. And it's still a little bit out for polls. We're still seeing a lot of registered polls versus likely voters. And so likely voters are a big deal because that is about 7 points higher than registered voters, because likely voters means they go through a little bit more strenuous algorithms to come up with those numbers. And it's a lot different. Registered voters is anyone can do that. You can do a poll online for something like that. But for registered voters, you have to really go call them, and you need to make sure you fit your models to make sure that they have the right kind of demographics. And then you want to determine if that's going to be something you want to do, and then that becomes more accurate. Now, based on what the polling has been done in the past, likely voters have been averaging about 7 points higher for Trump than it was in like 2016. And it kind of plays out that same way. And I'm assuming that number is going to hold today as well. So, but as the polls get further on, we'll see more, hopefully, registered voter polls, and then we'll see, likely voter polls, and then we'll see hopefully more accurate numbers. But again, the polling is never really going to be for Trump regardless, because, what are they going to say? Are they going to say, oh, Trump's winning? They won't do that. They would never do that. So they're going to take the numbers, and they're going to get the sample data, and they're going to ask the questions in a way, or they're going to sample what they feel they're going to sample in the way they want to sample to get the outcome that they want. And that's kind of the pessimistic role of it. But even if they were trying to be honest with the polls and trying to do their best, it doesn't matter because the Trump voter is not talking to these pollsters. So even if you had an honest poll who wanted to do the right thing, who had all the data they want, call all the people they want, people are not answering landlines anymore. They're not answering cell phones anymore. There's too many telemarketers. There's too many of that stuff going on. People don't trust it. So they build in assumptions. So if they want to go for 100 Trump voters and only get 3, then they're going to assume the 97 feel this way. And then they're going to make assumptions based on what they feel the turnout would be of the 97. So say, okay, well, we'll just say only half those will show up. So now we're talking about 47 people in this poll, and their numbers are already skewed off in the very beginning because they're using their own assumptions and biases to put into these metrics. That's how these polls really, really work, people. Okay. And the only real poll that works really is the actual poll. And even exit polls don't work. If you look at George Bush in 2000, or if you look at 2016, Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton were dancing in the after they saw the early results because they thought they were going to win because the exit polls had lied to them. So the only polls that work or matter are the ones that come out of the ballot booth the day of election. So, okay, see here. I got another question here. Okay, so Carrie says here, saw a poll here, saw a comment. This is a Reagan-Mondale situation. We're talking about the second time he won. Okay, so Reagan first went against Carter, and actually Reagan was actually behind like the month going into against Carter, and it ended up closing the gap with like the last month and won by a crazy margin. And the Mondale was even worse because I think he had was that Dukakis there? Am I saying that right? No, Dukakis was the president for someone else, I believe. But Mondale, yes, he took him out. Basically, I think he said on the debate with Mondale, Reagan said because he charged him of being too old and whatever, and Reagan said, "Well, yeah, that's I'm not going to. If you're going to attack me for this, I'm not going to attack you for your youth and inexperience." And after that comment at the debate, and Mondale was laughing, that was pretty much the end of Mondale because people realized that Reagan had a sense of humor, and Reagan and Mondale was pretty much done, and he blew him out by huge numbers. So thank you for that particular question, Carrie. Here we have one from C again. This one is, I saw 2 walkaway young Black voters on YouTube today starting to be free thinkers. That's a really good point, C. In fact, that's a good segue into what I want to talk about. Because the thing with young Black voters, especially Black males, is that the thing with Black people is that they vote Democrat, but they vote Democrat for a very different reason than white people on average. Well, they just do. And part of that is because if you look at some of my videos going back of how the Democrat Party went from, how the Republican Party was basically the party of abolition, Lincoln and so forth. And it just made sense that Black people would vote for Lincoln. And that went on for a while. And then came around the time of the New Deal, we started seeing Black people come away from that because they decided that, okay, do I vote for the party of the Klan, segregation, poll taxes, and so forth? Or do I vote for the party that now is going to allow me to eat with my family during a Great Depression? And so it's a Faustian deal. And so so they got embedded with the Klan to feed their families. And that was the first step of that. And there were some Black leaders back then who said it's time to turn Lincoln's picture to the wall. And so that's the first step. And then going into the 60s with JFK and with Martin Luther King and JFK visiting MLK in the prison. I think it was Alabama, I believe. Was it Alabama? Was it Georgia? I think it was Georgia. And at that point, Coretta Scott King's father actually told the Kennedy campaign that if this man was able to wipe the tear off my daughter, that I'm willing to support a Catholic for president. And that person actually wasn't her father. It was MLK's father. MLK Sr. was a Goldwater supporter, and he went out and actually delivered with his coalition what they call the Blue Bomb. It's like 2 million pamphlets they delivered to churches in the South, and that pushed Kennedy over the top. So that was the second phase, and that was pretty much it. And then when Johnson came in, he nailed the coffin in with the welfare and the war on poverty and the war on, the war on poverty did the deal there. And so, so anyway, back to my point. So from there, Black people were identifying with a social status of racism that they were attributing the Republican Party more with racism than they were with emancipation and civil rights, even though the Republican Party was founded on the sole purpose of ending slavery and granting civil rights to blacks. Okay. Now, but so because the Democrats are very smart and they're doing it, they basically got blacks dependent on government, and then generation after generation, that became a thing. They just vote Democrat. And I heard, if you watch the movie Uncle Tom, in that movie they actually talk about the fact that there were 3 pictures you saw in every black person's house. It was a picture of an image of a resemblance of a person who they think is Jesus, because there's no picture of Jesus. I'll say it that way. MLK and JFK in every single black house in the South. And so it's that kind of mindset that started people thinking we're going to vote Democrat. And that's just how it was. And so every year, the Democrats make sure they ram the point home. They're going to take your Medicaid. They're going to take your welfare. They're going to take this. They're going to do this. They're going to take your affirmative action. They're going to do all this stuff. And that's what happens. And so what's happening is, to your question here, I'm sorry, I'm kind of went around Robin's barn to say this one point, is that now with the internet and with people like me and other black conservatives out there, they're getting pissed. They're pissed because they're realizing that after 8 years of Obama, nothing's changed. In fact, it's worse. And so that's one of the things about Obama that I'm happy about, that he was able to get in there for 8 years, where white people put him in there both times, where he did absolutely nothing, implemented a leftist agenda, and nothing got better. And now black people can finally see for themselves, okay, what's going on? And now we have a person like Trump who really just doesn't care, right? He's just a straight up gangster. Someone who came in the 80s, a billionaire, who was kicking it with, Mike Tyson, kicking it with, all the hip hop stars from back in the day. I mean, he was just a man, right? And so then now they see that, and now they see that all of a sudden he's now a racist. All of a sudden, they're smart enough to realize that that's not smart. That's not good. That's not realistic, and that's not true. Because every talking point you hear about Trump goes back to that first year when he first started running for campaign, about the statement he said about Latinos coming across the border, some people who were coming over. He made a comment about my black people, stuff like that. Comments he made that they didn't understand what he's trying to say. Those are those kind of comments that had no bearing in fact, but yet they'll take a Joe Biden, they'll take this clown here, and they would totally give this guy a pass on everything that Joe Biden's done. And the segregation laws. I mean, him butting up with Robert Byrd, who's a Klan member, a high-ranking Klan member, mind you, and the comments he's made, off-color comments he's made, even recently talking about black people have no diversity in thought, that we basically are drones who are going to vote for Democrats no matter what, and we're going to go after the Latino vote because they're more diverse, and I need to put more emphasis on them. Total paraphrase, but that's what he was saying, that black people, we got you in the bag, and you are going to vote for us no matter what, and because you have no diversity of thought. And those kind of comments, if Trump had made that, seriously, if Trump had made those comments, it would have been all over everywhere. But the media keeps protecting this man because they want to drag him across the finish line like Weekend at Bernie's. And once he gets in office, gets inaugurated, I guarantee you Kamala Harris is going to make her move to become president as soon as possible. That's just what's going to happen. In fact, there's a poll out right now, I think I'll find it, which basically says that most American people feel that, here it is, feel that sorry about that. I used the wrong, I got the wrong headphone there. Sorry about that. Let me do this again. So let me go back to here. Let me see. Let's do. Sorry about that. I put the wrong guy up. All right, there we go. All right. So what I was showing you before I got conked out is that there's actually a poll here where 59% of Americans feel that Joe Biden will not make it past his first term. And that's what I feel is going to happen. So what Kamala Harris is going to have to do, she's going to have to actually run for president. And I don't think she's going to be able to do that. So that's what that question is for you, C, is that the black people are just waking up. And when they do, they get upset and they become radicalized in a good way. And then they start telling their friends. And then, so that's what ends up happening. So let's see this comment here. Let's do this here. This is another comment. Please explain why blacks turned the KKK were Dems, no Dems voted for civil rights. Was it all about welfare? I still don't understand. Okay, I covered that a little bit. Let me cover that in a second here. Let me see here. Sean Clear says he has a picture on my Facebook page. Okay, I'll see if I get to that. Okay, see, did I answer your question before about that? If I did, let me know. I thought I answered that. If I didn't, I'll do it. I'll say it again. Okay. So, but let me just say that again for people who just coming on. The short answer is this: that yes, black people did vote for Republicans, and they did switch at some point, but they switched in the 30s and 40s. In fact, within 4 years, the black vote went from like 35% for Democrats to 70% in 4 years. And all that came out of, and that's under Truman's first term, I believe. All of that came out of the fact that the New Deal, FDR was promising these things. And in doing so, promising these things, people were deciding for themselves, well, I do realize that the Democrats are a racist organization. They're responsible for the poll taxes, the segregation, the Jim Crow, and all of that. But at the same time, the president's offering us money, Social Security, set-asides and entitlements so that we can help live our lives. So they had to make a decision for themselves, and many did. And in doing so, FDR became a really, really popular president. He was there for like 12 years almost. Well, he served 4 terms. I think he served he got elected 4 times, and he finished, I think, 12 years, of 13 years of the 16 years. Anyway, he was there a long time. And World War II was going on, and the country was in good spirits because we won that, and he helped lead us through that. And so people identified as being Democrat with FDR. And so it was no longer a stigma with the Klan, even though FDR wasn't, look FDR up on his racial policies. I won't get into that here. I'm not too versed on that, but I know he wasn't. I know he wasn't a saint, but he was definitely a socialist and a communist in his thinking in terms of socialism. So, but anyway, I'm getting off track. So anyway, so after that, then the 60s came, and then with MLK getting arrested, JFK visited him in prison, and that led a charge of the black churches to support JFK, and then from there, with Lyndon Baines Johnson was able to put that into stone by locking him into the war on poverty. And that really put the black people into the Democrat column for the foreseeable future. And I think Trump is the first president we've seen in a long time who has the ability to crack into that. He's the first president that I think will be able to crack maybe 20%. That's a stretch, but I think he'll get at least 10. And I think if he gets 10, that's going to be a nightmare for Democrats. Remember, Trump got 8% in 2016, but if he gets double digits, it's going to be a tragedy for the Democrats. And if he gets 20%, it's just going to be a landslide across the board. So we'll keep an eye on that, and we'll see. But also, they have to worry about the Hispanic vote. The Hispanic vote, people aren't talking about that. They are really, really gung-ho for Trump. And so that's another thing that they need to be concerned with. So I'm interested to know about that as well. So let me see here. Here. Get some water here. The Democrats give breadcrumbs, always promising more. They keep promising with the next election. It's a proven formula, unfortunately, Sean. It's a proven formula. I mean, and to a lesser extent, Republicans do it too, but they don't. Here's the thing: they don't really have. The Republican Party doesn't have set-asides as part of their model. It's not part of their core model. If you look at that, it's liberty, it's ideas. It's like, self-empowerment. It's individualism. It's patriotism, and it's having strong laws and defense. Gun control is like nothing that they support. It's pro-gun ownership. It's Now, of course, we have the conservatives who are, or the so-called conservatives in the Republican Party in the middle, who are about set-asides and entitlements. But even that is not the crux of their talking points. All right, Democrats, that's all they're about. It's about identity politics, and it's about giving them those breadcrumbs, because they essentially want to buy the vote. They want to buy the vote so they can obtain power, and it's easier to do that. And the only way you can buy that vote is if you keep people uninformed, because no one wants their vote. No one wants their vote to be bought. But you can buy it through fear. You can buy it through entitlements, where they feel like, if I don't vote for this person, I won't get this amount of money for this. That's terrifying for some people, especially if you have several generations who that's all they've ever known. I mean, there are movies. I'm a big movie buff, right? And you look at these old movies like in the 30s and 40s. People looked at loans as it's a stigma. If you got money from the government, you have a stigma against you. There's a movie called Cinderella Man. It was with Russell Crowe, about a boxer, real life boxer. I forget his name. And there's a part in the movie where he's down on his luck. It's a really good movie. Ron Howard directed it. And he has to get money from his friends. He actually grovels to his friends and goes to the bank to get a loan. And he was so ashamed by that. At the end of the movie, he actually pays that loan off, or at least he did it after the fact, or after the credits rolled. He did that later in life, because there was a stigma against that. Now, after generation, there's less stigma. And so now there's fear, because people don't know how to, I hate to simplify this, but they're afraid that they're going to have to do something that they're uncomfortable with. And that's the climate that the Democrats want us to be in. They want us to be entitled to them so that we can always vote for them. It makes an easy election, right? And that's really what the Democrats are standing for. And that's one thing that I think people are pushing back on. But we need to get someone in there who's going to be able to keep it going for just more than 4 years. We're going to have Trump come in there for 4 years after that, and he's going to have to coattail another person, because I think 8 years won't be enough for Trump. He's going to need another 4, maybe 16 years total to get that generation, people used to patriotism, used to working, used to a good, strong economy, used to the things that we're used to having as Americans, used to freedom and liberty. And because we're also going to have to go into the education system and then go into that and start renovating that, start penalizing schools that are using their universities as indoctrination centers, right? Then we're going to have to go into the big tech and deal with that. So it's going to take some time to get through all that. So we're going to need about, I would think, four terms of a MAGA pro candidate that can do it. And after 16 years, I think then we'll have the country back to where it needs to be. And I think by then the Democrat Party will be totally destroyed by then. They'll probably be splintered in three groups. So that's what I think should happen for us to really get back on track, because Obama really did a number on us. He really did. So any questions here? Okay, so let me see. Right now it's about 9:53. I'm gonna go into the next topic here, and this particular topic is one I wanted to say that was pretty depressing, but I want to bring it up because no one's talking about this. And this is an article about a guy, I won't call him a monster, who came up to a kid who's 5 years old and shot him in the head while he's riding his bicycle. And if you hadn't heard this story, it says right here, North Carolina man accused of shooting a 5-year-old neighbor in the head at point blank range. And here's the little boy here. His name isn't to mention because he's a minor, but he was a cute kid, and it's just tragic. It says here that 25-year-old man accused of shooting his 5-year-old neighbor in the head at point blank range in Wilson, North Carolina on Sunday has been charged with first-degree murder in the boy's death. Darius Nathaniel Simmons, sorry, who cares what his name is? Who cares? 25 was arrested Monday after fleeing the scene and is in custody of Wilson police and members of the U.S. Marshal Service, Carolina's regional task force, the Wilson's Time reported. And he was found in his home in Goldsboro. Now, what a piece of crap dude this guy is. I mean, and see, here's the thing, right? I'm bringing him up, and I'm going to just be transparent. I'm bringing it up because the guy's black, okay? And I hate to do this, but this country is so divided on racial terms that anything that fits outside of their narrative, they won't show. They won't show a black on black crime. They won't show anything. They won't show a black officer mistreating a white officer, a white person. They won't show anything dealing with that. There's a person who ran through a crowd of people who were blocking the street. I forget where it was. I mean, it was horrendous. People flying in the air, whatever, and it was horrible. And so the media went off on it and said, they're blocking the street. This guy was doing this, this Trump supporter, whatever. Turns out the guy was black. The story was totally gone out of it. Okay. And so I point stuff like this out because we see these types of crimes against white people committed by black people all the time. And it is so atrocious that no one's talking about it. And it's really to the point now, it's just utterly disgusting. And I don't understand how people can sit back and see the hypocrisy and not stand up for it and say something about it. I know on Facebook people are, I know on Parler people are, but Facebook shadow bans and Parler is not quite where it needs to be. And Twitter is just a cesspool. So I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on this, but I just want to point that out because, let's just pray for the families because that's horrible. It just, from what I understand, it was just a, there's no excuse. I mean, there's nothing you can say about that. And so, I just wish the media was a little bit more fair in their coverage because I think what they don't want to show is that they don't want to show black people doing bad things because that plays against that narrative of the Black Lives Matter. It plays into the narrative that black people are some sort of saints, that they can do no wrong because they're always victims. Because the only way you can be a victim is if you're always a saint, if you're always doing the right thing. Well, I'm sorry. There is absolutely no accountability in the black community to a large part of this. I mean, look at Justice Smollett. I mean, look at that. I can go on. I mean, it's just, to me as a black person, I feel more freely to say this kind of stuff. I know some people might feel that way, but that, to say this is, make them look at like they're racist. But I think this is something we've been talking about for a long time, even going back to the 80s, back when DC was the murder capital of the country, where they had literally 365 murders in 1 year, one per day. And no one was talking back then about the accountability with the black community looking out for each other. Now, back then there was more things going on. There's more activism going on. But it just was not a good thing. And this has been going on for a long time. But I think right now it's gone extra bad, where we don't see anything attributing to real things that are happening in terms of crime. And one of the things we hear all the time is that the black man or the black person is being hunted down by the white cop. And that is just not true. That is not a statistical accurate statement at all. Last year there was like 15 people who were killed by police officers who were unarmed. But again, I say on that, just because you're unarmed doesn't mean you're not dangerous. But again, I said in the video yesterday, I did a top 10 video of the 10 reasons why black people should not vote for Democrats. Check that video out. I'll leave a link below. You can go check it out right now. And in that video, I say, hey, just because you're unarmed doesn't mean that, but let's give them the benefit of the doubt. 15 people killed by who are unarmed, who are black in 1 year by cops. No one wants to take a life. Okay, no cop wants to take a life. All right, let's just get that out of your head. All right, that's just ridiculous. But they have a gun for a reason, because bad guys don't listen to harsh language. You have to use force sometimes, unfortunately. And so, but that number is so small in comparative to the fact that black people commit 7 to 10 times more violent crimes than white people. Okay. So if that's truly the case, that black people are committing 7 to 10 times more crime than white people, then wouldn't it stand to reason that the cops would be more involved in those 7 to 10 times more people? And wouldn't also stand the reason that those are the kind of crimes where people are actually carrying guns? And wouldn't also stand the reason that those are the kind of people that carrying guns, that the police officer might want to pull his gun out? And also, wouldn't it be the kind of person that 17 out of 10 times that person who has a gun, who's being pointed at a gun, is actually going to use it at a time for those 10, 15 deaths? Or in the case, well, I'm sorry, those are unarmed. But you see my point? Is that it's a numbers game. When you get to those kind of numbers and you look at 15 versus those kind of numbers against that, it makes no sense whatsoever. So I am totally disgusted by this article. I don't want to talk about it anymore. So, so anyway, I hope I rambled there on you on that one, but yeah, it's just something that I really have a big problem with. I wish the media would do a better job of that, because what they're doing is they're playing into a narrative that's actually causing people to lose their lives. Okay. If people feel that cops are literally out here every night hunting down black people and attacking them and beating them and killing them, then of course they would think and act the way they're acting, right? If I thought that really was happening, then yeah, I wouldn't be so excited about the police force, would I? No, I'd be scared. In fact, if I'm driving in a car at 2:00 at night, I'm coming back from the beach, whatever, and I'm tired, and a cop pulls me over because maybe I was drifting, I was falling asleep, and now I'm on the side of the road. It's 2:00 in the morning. Who knows where I'm at? I'm in bum scratch somewhere, and a cop comes up to me. He's white, and I'm thinking in my head, "Oh my gosh, this is bad." And I'm on 10 and 2 on my steering wheel, and I'm freaking out. Now, if I thought my life was in danger, wouldn't I be agitated? Would I be a little angry as well if I thought that I could be a victim as well? When I answer questions back to him, when I maybe sometimes be a little bit more defiant, and wouldn't the cop also elevate his situation in that situation? You see how things can happen. So that's why the media is very responsible for a lot of this stuff. And I'm not saying people are responsible for their own actions, but when you feed into this kind of fear and feed into this kind of narrative just so they can get an agenda passed or a president into the White House, then I think that is totally it's unforgivable. And it's one of the main reasons why I put in that particular video why black people should not vote for Democrats. This goes also to Latinos as well and Hispanics, but I can't speak for them as much because I don't have a pulse on what's going on with them as much. But I do know firsthand what's going on in the black community because I just deal with it all the time. So anyway, let me do this here. Okay, so let me go to the next article here. And let me get rid of this guy here. Okay, so this next article is actually this is going to be in, I believe this is in Chicago. And I have a clip here that it's going to have some profanity in it. In fact, a lot of profanity in it. But I find this pretty cool, okay? And I think this is a good segue going into this because this particular video that I'm about to show you, it's about a minute long. It says that here, Black Chicago residents interrupt Black Lives Matter rally to support looters, demands BLM to leave neighborhood. So this title is kind of messed up. What's happening is that there is a rally by Black Lives Matter to support the people who were looting. And if you remember this weekend, they actually were looting like Best Buy and trashing like, Louis Vuitton and just going crazy. And so this rally was from BLM was to support those people who are committing those crimes. And so the people, black men, like I'm telling you, black dudes are not going to be coming out for Biden. I'm telling you right now, black men are not coming out for Joe Biden. Not like that. I'm telling you right now. And that's why the numbers are so high in the black community is because black men, we ain't playing that. Because we know the BS, right? We know the BS, all right? So anyway, so this guy here has a megaphone, and I'm going to play the clip here. And let me just play it here so you can hear it, and then I'll talk about it when it's done. Now, I can't talk once it's playing, but I want you to hear this because I want you to get the vibe of what's going on here. So let me pull this up. Here it is right here. Oh, by the way, it's gonna.
Oh baby! Oh baby! What a baby! Fucking baby! I ain't seen one of you motherfuckers when their kids got killed. Just shut up! I'm out here every motherfucking day. I'm out here. Y'all don't come out when a kid gets shot. Y'all come out when it got something to do with the fucking police. We out here every day watching our kids get their brains blew out with no fucking funding, no resources, but you motherfuckers getting all the resources, and y'all want to come over here and disrupt our motherfucking neighborhood. Now stand up if I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong if I'm wrong. I don't see none of you motherfuckers when these kids getting murdered. Don't forget about them motherfuckers on the other side too. That ain't no shit. The other motherfuckers over there that ain't no shit. Don't forget about them bozos too. Fuck, you gonna have a red nose on up under a mask. Don't forget about them bozos. Bozo the clown ass niggas. Bozo the clown ass niggas. Bozo the clown and white niggas and black niggas. Bozo the clown ass niggas. All of them bozo the clown ass niggas. All y'all goof ass bozo the clown ass niggas like black and white. Bozo the clown. Hey, check it out.
All right. So hopefully you can hear me. I don't know if you can or not. I'm assuming you can. Okay. So I don't know what happened there, but hopefully it played. But you got the gist of it, I hope. So in the video, in case it didn't play like I wanted to play, you had the guy in the megaphone, and he's basically telling the crowd, he's saying both black and white. He's saying, you guys aren't here when black people are being killed in the street. You guys are looting and doing this crazy stuff, and you're going to be gone tomorrow. And who's going to deal with the cops? Who's going to deal with the cleanup? Who's going to deal with the aftermath? We are. And we're sick of it. You know, why are you coming to our community, tearing things up? You don't live here. And then he said, tomorrow you're going to be drinking sangrias, you know, chilling, and we're going to be stuck here with our kids being murdered every night and dealing with the cops because they're already mad because of what y'all did. And that's the big thing that people don't understand. This whole Black Lives Matter thing is really, really, really backfiring. And it's going to backfire in a big way. And I hope it does, because, you know, the one thing the Democrats are really good at is this. They're really good at phrasing and words. They're really good at making arguments and or statements that sound good, but at the end, yes, I can't share that on Parler. I can share this on Parler as well. I'll put the video on Parler. I'll put a link in the description of this video as well. I will do that. So what they'll do is they'll take like something like Planned Parenthood and say, who could be possibly against Planned Parenthood? But behind that is the murdering of babies. Okay. And Black Lives Matter sounds great. I mean, who would be opposed to Black lives? I mean, obviously I wouldn't, right? But behind the scenes, it's a Marxist communist organization that's hell-bent on destroying the very fabric of this country. That's what it is. I'm all for Black lives, but I'm for all Black lives. In fact, I'm for all lives in period. All lives, period. But if we were really smart, we should have come out with all Black Lives Matter. We should have done that as a thing instead of all lives matter, because it's a narrative thing. Of course, all lives matter. But what they were trying to say was they were trying to frame it into a way to make us look like we're racist. Anything opposed to Black means you're racist. So by us saying all lives, oh, you must be racist. You must be racist. No, idiot. All lives means every person living. Have you ever seen a Venn diagram in math? It's the big circles on the outside, and inside is also a circle with Black people. There's also another circle with Koreans. There's also a circle with the Latinos. There's also a circle with whites. There's also a circle with other things. So it's a subset. That's what I'm trying to say. But I think strategically we should have said all Black Lives Matter as our first response, because then we could come into there with people in Chicago being killed, what no one cares about, seems like, and also unborn. That would have been a big thing, and they could not have come against that. That would have been impossible for them to come against that. So a woman actually got killed for saying all lives matter because they attributed that to being racist. And so what they're doing is they attribute things that are good to being racist because it's anti what they believe. Just like the Make America Great Again hat. How is that racist? How's that racist? I mean, but they wouldn't say because you're wearing that hat, it attributes you to your anti-Hillary or you're anti-Democrat, meaning you must be a conservative. If you are conservative, it means you must be a racist because all Republicans are racist. And so that's just how that twisted warped mentality goes. And so I think as conservatives, we need to be a little bit better at our branding, a little bit of our marketing, a little bit of our phrasing. But unfortunately, the left is just better at it than we are, and they probably always will be. So the only way we can really beat them, to me, in my opinion, is to hit them with sarcasm, hit them with memes, because memes actually bring out the humor and the stupidity in what they're trying to do. It forces you to think, and it disarms you because now you're not attacking somebody. You're making them think for themselves, and they're seeing it. They're getting angry, but they really can't refute it because what they're saying is true, and it's done in a non-confrontational manner. So I think, and that's one thing that Trump does very, very well. He trolls the living mess out of these people. And that's a form of memes as well. In his rallies, he'll troll people and to get a response, and also in a way to get people arguing over what he meant by that. And in doing so, that raises the discussion of it. And then they say, oh, well, maybe he was right about that. It may seem crazy at first, but all of a sudden he says this, and next thing you know, wow, he was really right about that. And so it's almost shocking people to your position, because these people just don't have they don't have any semblance of reality when it comes to the human condition, how people are inherently flawed. They want to feel that people are not inherently flawed, that they're getting bigger and better and stronger, like Star Trek. They were approaching some sort of utopian society. We're not. And if you think that way in your mind, then you're going to try to push that along, help it along. You're going to help be more progressive, push it forward, like Hitler tried to do. He was trying to push the human race forward because he felt that certain races were inferior, based on Darwin's book and books before that. Ernst Haeckel, his diagram he did with the embryos, convincing people that embryos and dogs were the same, saying that there's inherent differences in people and races, and therefore we can get rid of the ones that aren't progressing our society. And so it's that mentality, and that's why these people have such a hard time dealing with conservatives, because many of us have a hope, not only in humanity, but a hope in law and order, and that people will obey and be good once we have a society of safeness, of people who can defend themselves, because we understand that there are people who want to hurt us. So we need to be able to defend ourselves, own a gun, have free speech. That's the one thing that we understand, but they don't see it that way because they see us as being a hindrance to their progress. But it's their warped mentality on how the human condition plays into life. And their reality is wrong, and our reality is more closer to what truth is, and that ties us into a biblical Judeo-Christian framework. So I said a lot there, and I think at this point I am going to call this particular video done. I'm going to get away from this. I'm going to do something else, but I want to thank everyone for coming on here and staying on here. I really appreciate it. And I want to also thank all of my people who have been supporting me on comments and coming into the videos and talking about their opinions and actually helping me be encouraged going forward. Because doing this is really challenging at times, because you get so much information from people and you see so many different things when you research stuff, that it becomes really, really, it's easy to get down on some things because you're always seeing negative stuff, but you're always trying to put a positive spin on it. But I think right now where we are with the election, and I think where this country is going, I think right now we're at the cusp of something major. And I think we're something so major that it will hark back to the election of 1864, where literally had Lincoln lost that election, the country would have been split in two. And so I think we're at the point now where I can say that if this election is lost by Trump, that we're looking at a situation where this country will no longer be the country that we want it to be anymore. It will literally be two separate countries, maybe three, based on ideological means. And I think a lot of our rights are going to be up for grabs, and it's just going to be a bad thing. But I do feel that Trump's going to win this because of what I said, because what I'm seeing in the numbers, what I'm seeing in the internal polling, what I see in different demographics of what people are saying in terms of what's important to them, like the economy, what his people aren't blaming Trump for COVID-19. They see this for what it is, that Trump did what he could do when he did it, and that they like the fact that he's having these meetings. So the internal trends are there. I think Biden picked a horrible candidate. Oh, I forgot. I missed one thing. I'm sorry. I had one thing I want to talk about. I'm glad I kept talking. So my last point was on my initial outline was who Biden should have picked, or I'm glad who he didn't pick. And that is Tulsi Gabbard of Hawaii. Now, I could talk a long time on this one, but Tulsi Gabbard right now, had he picked Tulsi Gabbard, that would have been a huge blow for Trump in his campaign. Not that he couldn't have overcome it, but it would have been a lot more work to beat them, because Tulsi would have done a lot of different things for Biden. Number one, it would have showed that he really is serious about being a moderate in the party. Number two, it would show that he is willing to take on a person who is less experienced, but also not a person who's afraid to talk about her own party. And also, Tulsi is a very likable person. Okay, very likable, and that is something that is really, really hard to overcome. if you look at her record, what she believes in, she's a total leftist. Total leftist. But at least she loves the country and is not afraid to talk about terrorism, not talking about defending our country. She says she's a hawk and a dove, that she's willing to go into areas and fight to defend this country. She just doesn't want foreign wars, which essentially is the same platform as Trump. So for defense, she's almost similar to Trump in that matter. I don't know if she's for the spending that Trump is for, because she's also for the Green Deal. She's also for Medicaid for all. So she's got some leftist policies in there that could not possibly be able to do that, plus the defense spending. But she's attractive in that area, and I think she is someone who would have given Trump a lot of problems. I think the biggest negative to her would have been the fact that she probably is not ready to be president, because people who are looking for Biden right now don't think he's going to be there, at the end of his term. So with her inexperience, people may feel that she may not be the person that they want for that role, which is probably why he ultimately didn't pick her. But I don't know. But I think there are other candidates he could have picked, but I think he was just pressured by the three things I mentioned earlier. And yeah, I think that's going to be, that's it. So I think we dodged the bullet there. And so again, everyone, I want to thank you so much for coming out here again tonight. This is The Conservative Take. And if you like what I do here, where I take culture, TV, movies, and politics and filter it right to you, then please consider hitting that like and subscribe button and that bell icon so you don't miss any future content. Also, if you want to go to walkedaway.net and check out some shirts that I have, it's a shirt that I have that tells you what year you actually walked away. I've never actually announced this ever. I just mentioned it and people can go to the link and see for themselves. But it's basically some shirts you can get that basically says the year you walked away and walk around. It's a talking point. So people say, hey, when did you walk away? Cool. So, hey, Kenny, how you doing, brother? Good to see you, man. And so you can support the channel there. That helps us out. And yeah, so that's it. So again, everybody, I want you to just thank you so much. And if I'm forgetting anything, I apologize. But I will put another video out pretty soon. And that will probably be dealing with Kamala Harris in a more formal way. And anything I missed, I'll put in that video. Okay. And so with that, hope everybody has a good evening, and I'll see you guys next time.